Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to a very special edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Well, Monday is Veterans Day, and the biggest Veterans Day event in the country is the Veterans Day Parade taking place in New York City. It's an extraordinary sight and an extraordinary tribute to great American heroes. And joining us now here to discuss all of this and also what his organization does is Mark Otto. He is the president and also the executive director of United War Veterans Council. Of course, the producers of this incredible parade, which is, again, a great tribute to America and freedom. Mark Otto from the United War Veterans Council. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Rita. It's an honor to be here. And we're honored to be partnered up with WEC Radio for the parade this year.
We are so thrilled to be a partner with you, and it's so aligned with our values.
Absolutely.
You know, we love honoring veterans. We love honoring their families. Yep. And I can't think of a more majestic and more important way than showcasing it to the world. Talk about this extraordinary parade.
So the parade goes back to 1919. So, the victory parades from World War I turned into Armistice Day, which turned into Veterans Day. So veterans have been on Fifth Avenue since 1919, and it's incredible to see because you see, particularly now, we see still some World War II veterans in every generation since then, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, post 9/11 veterans. So it really touches your heart when you see these old timers that were out there storming the beaches on Normandy doing their sort of last hurrah. And it's different than any other parade. The heritage parades are very important. All the other parades on Fifth Avenue are important. However, it's sort of special to be able to literally reach out and say thank you for your service and welcome home to all these veterans. You know,
it's huge, first of all, too. Yeah. It's tens of thousands of people. I mean, not just the participants. And then you think about in New York City, the biggest place in the world. Describe just the scene for people who haven't been to the parade and just what a majestic sight it is.
It really is. So we typically have over 20,000 marchers. In 2019 was our centennial parade. I think we had over 30,000 marchers that year. So it's incredible to see. This year, we have about 130 unique vehicles in the parade. We have antique vehicles and military vehicles in it. We have over 20 floats in the parade. We have 36 states that regularly send marching units to the parade. And then our foreign allies come from around the world, all across Europe, as far as Australia and South Korea. So it's incredible it takes an entire year to put this together.
Wow, talk about some of the planning, because I can't imagine just what an endeavor that is.
So the incredible thing is you hear the name, the United War Veterans Council, you think it's at least like a panel, like a council. There's really three of us that work on this full time. And the impressive part about it is three of us can move over 20,000 marchers up Fifth Avenue every year because of the support of all of our volunteers. The volunteers really make us. So some of our volunteers have been with us like 5, 10, 15, as many as 20 years they've been doing this year in and year out. And that's a really important part of it because it's a reflection of how the country feels about our veterans and how important it is. And the really neat thing is some of our volunteers are veterans. So we have post 9/11 veterans that are doing this. And I ask them, you're a veteran. Why are you doing this? And they're like, to honor the veterans before us. So it's really incredible. And it's a tradition that's been going on since 1919.
You talk about sort of all these generations, which I think is so amazing to always see. There's such a camaraderie, too, isn't there, amongst veterans? Talk about that bond.
Oh, so I always say we're more than just the parade, right? So we host the largest veterans reunion in the country. So you think about it, particularly the old timers that are getting out there in their age. And every year they look forward to seeing all their buddies that they served with or from their generation. And the parade is all about that. And then also what I love to see is the post 9/11 veterans, talking to the Vietnam veterans. that they looked up to, or the Desert Storm veterans, or everyone looks for the World War II veterans nowadays. Sadly, they're dying off. So this is, basically their last hurrah. Many of them that still come to the parade are way up in their 90s. I have a buddy who's 102 years old. He's been coming the last 6 years. I met him on the honor flight when we were flying all these old timers down to Washington, D.C., and I was a guardian for him. So Walter flew 35 B-24 missions in the Pacific.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like you hear things like this and you think about all the movies you see on World War II. It's like incredible that somebody could live through something like that. But he's been coming every year, and he'll be here this year to lay the wreath. And, I think the old timers like that. And it really, what's more patriotic than to come out and say thank you to those folks.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Absolutely. And you and I both went over to Normandy at different times.
Yep.
And when you see these World War II veterans, for me, daughter of a prisoner of war who was rescued by American troops in World War II, I can't thank them enough. I get so sentimental, Mark, when I look at them and to think of the history. And they are literally living treasures among us because just you said they're dwindling.
Yep, absolutely. Going overseas every year is one of my favorite things. I'm sort of like the foreign exchange student for the parade, if you will. So I go across as somewhat of an ambassador to the veterans community. I've had the opportunity of going to the Queen's birthday before she passed 3 times and the King's birthday once. So I go across, I meet our foreign allies, I make friends with them, and I invite them to come back and march on our parade in Fifth Avenue every year. It's been going on since 2018, so it's pretty incredible. And it got to the point where I was going to Normandy. And as a Marine, I got to go to Belle-Wood in France, which is a famous Marine World War I battle, and then into Belgium. So this is the first year we started hosting events overseas as well, because we have a legacy and education component of our organization, and then health and wellness as well. But the legacy and education part of that is actually the parade. But we host military-type ceremonies across New York, throughout this area, and then we just started overseas this past summer. So we did a series of ceremonies, both in France and in Belgium. We brought American veterans across. We linked up with our foreign allies. We had folks that came in, British allies came in. Of course, France was there, Belgium was there. The Canadians came in too. So it was really special because we visited all these historic landmarks, like laying wreaths at the Menin Gate in Belgium, which was a launching point for many of their troops in World War I. And then we worked our way back to Paris. So, when we touched into France, we visited the Somme American Cemetery. We went to the Flanders American Cemetery, and we visited the graves of New Yorkers who served in World War I that gave their lives serving over there. So that was sort of a touch point, that was special for New Yorkers. I'm a New Yorker myself, and I'm 6th in my family actually serve in war. So my ancestors, my great uncle was in the New Yorker division in France.
Oh, my goodness.
And then my grandfather was under Patton's Third Army in World War II in France. And then also my granduncle was awarded the Bronze Star in France in World War II as well. They were on the Army before me. My dad did 3 tours in Nam. My uncle did 2 tours in Nam. So I was the first Marine. So they used to tease me a little, but then I went to airborne school at Fort Benning, which is an Army school.
Yep, in Georgia.
Yeah, and then my first jump out of airborne school at Benning was jumping into a Green Beret survival school on Camp McCall at Fort Bragg. So then they all got quiet.
Wow. I actually jumped with the Golden Knights, by the way.
Way.
Yes, I did.
Oh, my God.
I did
That's
a tandem
amazing.
jump with the Golden Knights.
Wow. That's so incredible.
I have such respect for the military and such a love of the military, as you know, Mark. You talked a little bit about your background.
Yep.
Talk about your experiences too. What led you to be a Marine when you said you got Army in your background?
So it's so funny because when I was a kid and I was growing up in high school, I used to study all about the Vietnam veterans, right? Especially special operations in Vietnam. It's, you know, it was incredible. There was like a plethora of history involved there. And so, you know, I grew up in the 80s. Everyone saw like Rambo movies and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I want to be Rambo. So I went in and I found out that in order to be a Green Beret, you actually had to be a sergeant before you even tried out.
Right.
So theoretically, you had to be like, do well and do 4 years well and become a sergeant and then try out. I was like, well, I'm in year 1 and I don't know if I want to be doing that. So I found out in the Marines that you could actually go out of boot camp and go into these types of specialized units. So that's really why I joined the Marine. I ended up getting some Army training that was awesome anyway because of it. But I went through Paris Island. I was 3rd Battalion there. And then I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, which is very rough and tumble over 30 years ago. I was in from 88 to 92. And then back then in the mid-'80s until the mid-'90s, they had what was called the Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and Intelligence Groups. And I was in their intelligence company, but I was in operations. So I started out as a radio operator. And then I became what was called a sensor surveillance operator. So we put out tactical remote sensor fields and track people, and then we target them. So in my first deployment, I was barely 19. I turned 19 November 22nd, and then in 89, and then boom, I was in the Panama invasion. Was my first deployment. We were cycling people through Panama for years, putting sensors around the bases, around the canal down there to make sure that everything was secure. So I was on a routine rotation down there in Panama. And the interesting thing was there was a series of events that culminated into triggering the Panama invasion going off. But one of the last incidents occurred was a Marine and a couple officers were out in town in their civilian clothing out on Liberty, and they got lost, and they ended up in front of a PDF station, a Panamanian Defense Force station, after Noriega declared war in the United States. And they were near a roadblock. They tried to run away. The roadblock opened fire on them. They shot the Marine right through the back and injured a couple of the Navy officers that were in there as well. So Lieutenant Robert Paz was the Marine that was killed, and that was sort of the last trigger in a series of events. And the reason why I know his name is because when I flew down to Panama, the invasion actually triggered right before that we were actually going in.
Wow,
So,
what a historic moment.
So
I remember all the headlines. I remember.
So I just turned 19. I landed on Howard Air Force Base, and we were going to go to Robin Naval Station. And we got a briefing from the guys from Stapleton, which are like the snipers down there that know everything. And they were like, here's the deal. We're at war, and we're all in civies. Our plane just landed. They were like, are you guys from 2nd SRI Group? We're like, yes. They're like, wait here. And a troop carrier came around, and boom, the tailgate opened. They're like, grab your weapons. We're at war. And before we went anywhere, we actually went with them and hit checkpoints, and we had maps out because back then you're writing things on maps. And sure enough, they told us the bad news and the good news. The bad news is the team before us ripped all the sensors out of the ground because you want to put new ones in because the batteries only last so long. You want to know where they are. And then they're like, the good news is every Marine's a rifleman. So we got broken up and sent in different places. So
wow. So you got thrown right in it.
Yeah, we got literally thrown right into it.
And you've also had beyond even Panama. You also were Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, right?
Yeah, that was the very next year. So yeah, the rude awakening when I got down there, though, I actually put Robert Paz's body on the plane. And that was one of the first things that I did in Panama. So
how powerful! Wow, that must have been so moving.
Big awakening for somebody that just turned 19, their first time going into combat. But yeah, Desert Storm happened, and that was a big buildup. If you remember, there was about 650,000 U.S. troops that were sent over there. So when the Iraqis invaded Kuwait, we tried everything as far as negotiations and dealing with them to try and get them out politically, and that failed after about 6 months. And then we gave them a deadline, and then boom, we had a 6-week bombing campaign that turned into a ground offensive. But it was amazing that we got 38 countries on our side, 650,000 U.S. troops, about 1 million altogether with all of our allies. So it was the largest land invasion, since at least Korea, if not World War II. So to be a part of something so historic and to see it unfold. I was on these small scout teams putting out these sensor fields forward of our troops so they couldn't see the buildup or what we were doing. That's
I was going to say that's vital.
Yeah. And then we had other ones that we actually shot in from fighter bombers that were shaped like missiles that actually embedded in the ground that could pick up all the tank vibrations. So when we kicked off the invasion going into Kuwait, they cut through the minefields. There was literally, some reports are like there were a couple million mines around Kuwait. And most of it was blown up by line charges, which created paths that we all went through. And when we went through, it was amazing because it was 6:30 in the morning. And they had blown up all the oil wells to cover their tracks and created all smoke screen. So SATCOM couldn't see actually down on what was going on, but our sensors were pinging, and that's how we tracked them out. And that's where we accurately bombed them going out.
I remember that was so historic too.
Yeah.
That moment, and for you to have been there right on the front lines. I mean, you think about these.
It was
different
crazy.
ones. That's incredible.
Yeah.
As a young military person, I think it's wonderful too, Mark Otto, that you understand what it's like there to be in the fight. You've been there in the fight, and you understand how important it is that Americans recognize the sacrifice and service. Before I move on to getting back a little bit to also what you do at the council, you also have a lot of heroes in the council. I was looking at the list. It's like a who's who. It's like a rock star of military heroes. And one named Vince McGowan.
He's amazing.
He really is. You talked about Rambo. This guy is like Rambo. Describe to all of our great listeners and followers what his background represents, because he really is sort of an icon in the veterans' music.
Yeah, Vince is a badass. I mean, I call him an OG, so original gangster of it all. And Vince served on what we used to call CAP platoons, so combined action platoons. So they would take a small, scout team or reconnaissance type Marines that would be embedded with the Vietnamese indigenous troops, and they would train them how to fight and defend themselves. So they're in I Corps, like right across from the hot spots where the Viet Cong and NBA were. So they would train them to defend themselves, but they had sustained combat for many, many days. Some of the heaviest combat in Vietnam during the war was in that area. So Vince had been through it all, and he ended up becoming a team leader with them. So it was really special for me, especially in 2019. Vince was recognized by Trump because Trump came to the parade in 2019 for the Centennial Parade. And one of my friends is a reconnaissance Marine background, and paddles are something I've seen them on your walls here. So yeah, if you do something special and significant in the reconnaissance community, they create these paddles, and the different shapes and sizes of the paddle really matter. So he created a paddle for Vince that was like gigantic, of course, because what Vince did. But at the time, the Commandant of the Marine Corps presented the paddle to Vince, along with him meeting Trump at the parade. So that was a special moment for me, just because Vince is one of my sort of heroes.
I think he's a lot of people's heroes,
absolutely.
don't you think?
Yeah. It's amazing to be affiliated with somebody like that. So he's my predecessor. So to say I had
big shoes to fill,
tremendous shoes to fill. I'm still trying to fill them. Yeah.
But what an honor for you to be a part, and for all of us, and all of us at WABC. We're so happy to be partnering with you for this parade. This is really, I also feel at this time in America, and with so many things going on in the world, there's a lot of hot spots in the world. It's even more important than ever that we recognize the great men and women who've sacrificed so much. People like you, people like Vince, and all the tens of thousands that are going to be marching out there, and even some of the folks who are going to be on the sidelines. There's a lot of veterans that come out and come out to support, and their families who go through this with all of us together as a country. Explain sort of why you think, Mark, maybe this moment in particular really is important, because I think there's so much uncertainty in the world right now. There's a lot of places, and we have to remember we've got a lot of troops sort of on the verge, on standby in a lot of spots.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the important thing that sort of makes us different, obviously the Veterans Day parade is unique, but veterans are a cross-section of America. You have liberals that are veterans, you have, conservatives that are veterans. So every walk of life are veterans, right, throughout the generations. So I think people actually feel a tie to that no matter which side of the aisle you're on. Because of freedom doesn't know if you're a Democrat or a Republican, right? So,
it's not a red or blue. It's a red, white, and blue.
Yeah, and it turns into you fight for your country But when you're boots on the ground and things are flying and you're in tough situations, it's always the people to your left and the right that you're actually out there with it in the fight. And that's really what matters. And it doesn't matter to you what color they are. It doesn't matter to you what race they are. It doesn't matter to you what their beliefs are. They are your brother or your sister that are out there, putting their lives on the line right next to you. So I think that's important. I think people get that. Because since I've been involved with the parade since 2016, we never had a significant incident at the parade, or we've had protesters, but we also speak to both sides of the aisle because we have veterans that are on both sides of the aisle,
right?
And we've been able to sort of contain that. But I think that people respect Veterans Day, and they know that if you're protesting for whatever you're protesting, it's because the men and women that are out there putting their lives on the line that you're able to protest. It's because of these people that you're in a democracy, that you could say whatever you want and have the freedom to do so. So I think people appreciate that and they respect that.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a universal message.
Absolutely.
And you talked about also the Vietnam guys. Every time when I see them, I always say I wish I had been a journalist at that time. Obviously, I'm not old enough, but I wish I had been, because every time I see a Vietnam guy, I say, welcome home. And I'm so happy to at least now see America appreciating them. And hopefully we can make up for them not being recognized, I think, as much, obviously, as everybody agrees when they came back and getting the respect and the love that they should have gotten. I love what you do also at the United War Veterans Council, that there's layers. You brought up the legacy and education. There's also health and wellness.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So since I came on board with the WVC and I sort of started running things in 2018, one of the first things I did, even before I was at that point, when I was a volunteer, I started a health and wellness program. And it started out with rucking for social fitness. So I have friends that run this organization called Go Ruck. And Go Ruck is founded by a Green Beret friend of mine. And they started building these backpacks that are streamlined. And you put steel plates on them and a water bladder. And they go out in groups, and they host about 900 events across the world now. It started out in the U.S. And all of them have somewhat of an educational component to them. One of their biggest events is actually the 9/11 event here in New York. And it's all special operations cadre, and it's not a finish line. You sign up for 7, 15, or 24 hours, and you sort of go through the gauntlet, the ringer of what it's like to be in the special operations world. Mm-hmm. And there's a strong emphasis on team building and leadership, right? So, but they also teach you about these historical lessons. So I took that and we started doing social fitness, and I partnered up with Samaritan Daytop Village. Mm-hmm. So they have 2 4-step facilities that are live-in and multi-generational. Some of them go back to Vietnam, and these live-in facilities get them clean, get them, jobs, and reintegrate them back into society. It normally takes about 6 months to a year to go through the process. But we started doing social fitness with them. And then it was amazing because I didn't go out with this plan to expand and have all these different spokes on the wheel. But all these people started falling into my life. I met the people who are starting an equine farm. I became the first veteran to actually go through the program. So it helped me. I was going through the VA for post-traumatic stress and treatment for that. At the same time, I was doing this holistic approach with equine therapy, and I helped them to clear the fields. There's a 13-acre farm out there. The organization is called Serenity Stables, From Combat to Calm.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so for 6 months, they brought me through this process. We blueprinted it, and for 8 years now, we've had veterans coming out every Wednesday, alternating through the Samaritan Daytop Village veterans facilities. One's in Times Square, and the other one's in Queens. And they come down to where I am, the Navesink River area of New Jersey, which is a beautiful area right by the ocean.
Yeah, that is.
And we do social fitness with them. We do the equine therapy with them. We've actually had we had them learn how to ride horses and do riding therapy as well. And then other people started falling into my life. So Sail Ahead is another organization that we deal with out in Long Island. And that's the only thing that we do that's not co-located down in the Navesink in New Jersey. We do it on the north and south shore of Long Island in the summer. And half the crew knows how to sail, and they teach the veterans how to sail. So they're in this sort of positive stress environment where they're all working as a team to harness the wind and the power of the ocean. And it's incredible to see these veterans out there, multi-generational, and they're literally working with each other. Some have never been on a sailboat in their entire life, and they're working the lines, working the jib. They're steering the ship like, they've never been on a boat before, and they're doing all these things.
How beautiful.
So people walk away from this and they're just like, this is incredible. So that keeps them coming back. And then Annie Art Academy is down where I live in Red Bank, New Jersey. And Annie Art, it's a studio that was dedicated to veterans. And we have them go in there and they do art therapy. And they're taught classes, charcoal, pencil, paint, whatever it is. And it's just an hour to like clear all that white noise that's going on in your mind, because you can think of just the stressors of being, even though it's a rehab facility, imagine being in Times Square, just the noise going on, right?
Yeah, you're going to need a rehab facility to get through Times Square.
So when they come out there to where I am at the Navesink area, it's like they get a whole entire day of this. So when we do it, we normally start out with like, hiking in Hartshorn Woods, and then we go to the equine farm for a couple hours, and then we go to Annie Art Academy.
Great.
And then the amazing thing is we also had local food restaurants that wanted to get involved in this. So like Texas Roadhouse and Homedale, they provide meals, and they open their doors in the middle of the day when they're normally closed. And my Air Force friend, Tom Clayton, is out there, and he actually opens the doors and feeds them a feast every time they come out. Or John Bon Jovi, the rock star, he actually has Soul Kitchen that's in Red Bank.
Yep.
And Soul Kitchen was started with the premise that people who can't afford meals, they volunteer their time and earn meals.
Yep, I've heard, actually, he's told me about it, him and his wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they're amazing. So most people don't know this. John's parents were both in the Marines. That's
right.
how they met.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful thing when we have the entire day of people giving these things to veterans and the services. But at the end of the day, we go to Soul Kitchen and we help clean up, and we sweep the floors, we set the tables, we clean the windows, and then we all sit down and eat together. And John's dad, Mr. B, we call him, he used to actually cook and volunteer on Wednesdays. That's why our program actually happens on Wednesdays.
How beautiful. I love that you do all these layers. Before I let you go, how can people find out? How can they volunteer? How can they add to all these incredible layers? Obviously, what you guys do year round around the globe. It's amazing. But also this incredible event that we're so proud to partner with you here at 77 WABC, and to be able to be a part of the parade, whether it's for this year or also even for future years, because it sounds like an incredible, enormous endeavor. I've seen it and it's breathtaking, so I can vouch just how incredible and how moving it is. But how can people help? Because there's so many great people there of all stripes who want to do whatever they can.
Awesome. So first off, the parade's on Monday. So it starts at 12:30 and it goes to 3 p.m. It's going to be on Fifth Avenue, of course. It starts in front of the Flatiron at 26th Street. And it goes to 45th Street on Fifth Avenue. So come out, you can watch and see the veterans and thank them for their service in person. The other thing, you can go to uwvc.org. Again, we're United War Veterans Council. It's a mouthful, but uwvc.org. And you can learn about our health and wellness program. If you wanted to give monetary support, that would be wonderful. And you can learn more about what we do, because it's not just a parade. That's sort of our tagline. It's not just a parade that we do.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see all the layers, and also to see your background and all the other great people that are a part of this incredible organization. Thank you, first of all, for your incredible service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you also for honoring America's heroes, not just on Veterans Day, but every day. Yeah. We're really honored to be a part of it. And everybody, be sure to download and share this podcast. And Mark Otto, thank you very much. And thank you for everything that you guys do at the United War Veterans Council. And I want to remind everybody, uwvc.org.
That's right.
If you want to give and help any way that you can. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. For Veterans Day in particular, I just want to say one thing. Veterans, when you ask them or you say to them, thank you for your service, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction for veterans to say thank you, which is sort of awkward because it's like thank you. Right? But it took me years to figure out what the appropriate thing to say is. And I sort of came up with this thing for myself. It was an honor to serve. It is an honor to continue serving veterans.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby. And thanks for all you do to protect America.